In the summer of 1944, the Red Army launched a massive offensive in Belorussia, just a few weeks after the invasion of Normandy and 3 years to the day after Germany's 1941 invasion of the Soviet Union. Codenamed Operation Bagration, and the first of a series of major strikes, it will bring the Red Army 5 weeks later at the gates of Warsaw. The Wehrmacht's Army Group Center was routed. A total of 17 Wehrmacht divisions were completely destroyed. It was a blow the German army never recovered from. Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today I'm going to be talking about a new game which was just announced. A game that I've covered a little bit on the channel, or at least its predecessor, and I'm kind of excited about. The game in question is Steel Division 2. So you may remember I have played a fair amount of Normandy 44 Steel Division, which is a game that is made by Eugen Systems, the developers of the War Games series, the developers of Ruse, and published by Paradox Interactive, the strategy game publisher we all know and love. They publish and make games like Hearts of Iron, the Victoria series, and the Crusader Kings series, those types of games. Well, Eugen Systems, who has this history of RTS, sort of quasi-historical Cold War, World War II type games, partnered up with Paradox to publish the first of their World War II games since Ruse, it came out a little bit over a year ago, I believe it was. I think it was June of last year, which was called Steel Division. That game has had a few expansions and whatnot, and it looks at the Western Front during the operations in and around Normandy during World War II. Well, that game may or may not have sold well. I've kind of heard mixed reviews. There's been rumors out there that Steel Division didn't do as well as some had hoped, and sort of despite a few DLCs, despite enjoying it quite a bit, it seems like the War Games fan base did not quite embrace the game as much as would have been nice. But in any event, it was obviously successful enough, or Eugen Systems believed in it enough, to go and make a sequel, because that's what they're announcing today. They're announcing Steel Division 2, which is going to take the conflict and move it to the Eastern Theater. So Steel Division 1, 1944 Normandy, looks at the operations during D-Day and shortly thereafter. Steel Division 2 will look at somewhat of an under-reported or under-covered topic, I think, in war games, and that is Operation Bagration, which occurred shortly after D-Day, so it's around the same time frame, and it occurred in the Eastern Theater. It occurred in Belorussia, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, and was one of the great decisive battles of the war. We often think of Stalingrad as the turning point, at the very least in the Eastern Theater, if not the whole Second World War for the Germans, this defeat which they never recovered from, and there's some truth to that. But the real turning point, the real decisive defeat that crippled the German army's ability to effectively defend against the Soviet Union, that really dramatically hastened the fall of Nazi Germany, was the Russian victory during Operation Bagration. Operation Bagration lasts from June 22nd, 1944 till August 19th, 1944. More than 17 German divisions are destroyed. About a quarter of the German military's total strength are casualties. So a quarter of the German military's strength in the Eastern Theater, roughly, are casualties during this campaign. And it completely destroys, or nearly completely destroys, the German military's Army Group Center, which is sort of one of the key formations of the German military on the Eastern Front. It rips a huge hole in the German line, a hole which the Germans are never really going to be able to effectively plug, and assures their rapid defeat as the year runs on. From the conclusion of Operation Bagration to the end of the war, a mere, 9 months or so pass? It is the decisive moment of World War II in the Eastern Theater, and it doesn't really cover a lot. And Steel Division 2 is going to cover that campaign. Now, Steel Division 2 is interesting to me for a few reasons. One of my complaints with Steel Division 1 was the way the campaign system worked. There was just a handful of campaign options. There were 3 campaigns. They were scripted battles. They had carryover casualties, but essentially it was like, 4 linked battles, and then the campaign was over. And it felt a little bit cheap. It felt a little bit hollow, especially when you compare it to like Wargame Air-Land Battle, which I think has one of the best campaign systems, sort of a dynamic dynamic campaign in Europe during a hypothetical Third World War with a little bit of back and forth, sort of this operational map that you need to worry about, and then you go down into the tactical battles. It sounds like Steel Division 2 is going to have a much enhanced campaign. The words, according to their website, is there will be a gigantic strategic dynamic campaign, the brand new epic game mode that puts you in charge of an entire army on a huge map up to 150 by 100 kilometers maps. So huge maps, supposedly putting you in charge of entire armies. Obviously, they have skirmish mode, multiplayer mode, 25 maps will be available to fight on, conquest, destruction, attack, defense, more. As they say. They'll continue to have 10 versus 10 multiplayer, which I know is a big thing within the Steel Division and wargaming community. Multiplayer has always been sort of one of their differentiators. In addition to that, just like all the other Eugen System games, there's going to be a huge roster of units that you can play from. They say there's over 600 units that are fielded by both the Germans, or the Axis powers, and the Red Army. Things like the Katyusha rockets, the T-34 tank, the T-34-85 tank. There will be anywhere from up to 18 divisions. So that's a huge number of different types of divisions. Steel Division Normandy had a bunch of different divisions that you could create, and basically the way these work is you have basically a deck of different units that you can call into a battle, and that deck is created within the context of a division. So you might command the 2nd Panzer Division. Historically, if that division had a lot of Panzer IVs, that would be the bulk of your armor in that division. You'd have infantry units. You'd have a certain number of cards of those units that you could call in to fight during these real-time tactical battles. You earn points during the battle. As you earn more points, you can use them to call in more troops. And then, you take casualties, and you can't, you have a limit on what you can call in based on your division's makeup. You might only have, 18 Panzer IVs, and if they're all destroyed once they're destroyed, you can't call any more in that battle. And so there's this, different divisions have different makeups. A false jumper or a paratrooper division has a very different makeup than an armored division, which has a very different makeup than a static coastal defense division. And that's all in Steel Division 1 for Normandy, and now they're saying there's over 18 divisions, over 18 new divisions, which will be part of the game. They're also claiming they're making substantial changes to deck building mechanisms and combat, together with more and realistic art directions, so that'll be interesting. But really, essentially, it sounds like another Steel Division game with some enhancements, some new units, some new divisions, a vastly increased scope. But the thing that really seems to stand apart for me, because Steel Division, to me, I don't play a ton of multiplayer. I do a little bit of co-op. It's a lot of fun. But in general, I'm not a competitive multiplayer person for this kind of a game. Where this game could catch me is the campaign. And I think the most interesting thing of Wargame Air-Land Battle back in the day was the campaign. It was really intriguing. You had this grand strategy map. You had to make operational decisions. Do you want to use strategic bombers on supply routes or on hexes? Do you want to do things like tactical? I think they had tactical nukes. Where do you want to deploy your forces? Where do you want to fight? And that kind of got lost, in my view. At least it wasn't done as well in Red Dragon, and then it was completely lost in Steel Division. It sounds like to some extent they're bringing that back. And let me read you the little blurb that they have, and I apologize because I think they had some maybe non-native English speakers who wrote the promo, but I'll just read it here real quick. The promo reads, Dynamic Strategic Campaigns. Relive Operation Bagration through the brand new 1-to-1 scale dynamic strategic campaigns. In the boots of a general, you are the leader of thousands of men. You manage your troops' movements. You decide which battles to fight to win the war. You are leading men. Now you're in charge of your entire army corps. So some English translation issues aside, it sounds like what they're doing here is you get to fight the battles out, as you always do in the Wargame and Steel Division series, on a high-fidelity 3D tactical map. You call units in based on your division's makeup, but within the context of this game, it appears that there's going to be a dynamic campaign map, so maybe similar to Wargame Air-Land Battle, except that you're in command of a whole army corps. At least that's how it reads. So maybe you've got 5 or 6 divisions that you have at your disposal to fight a series of battles, and you have to make decisions on where to commit your troops, where to move your forces, on sort of a grand strategy map of some kind. And that's really intriguing. That's the kind of thing that could get me personally excited about this game, is if there really is, these gigantic campaign maps. As I said, I think I said this earlier, according to the website, they're going to have grand strategic dynamic campaigns. There will be a brand new game mode that puts you in charge of an entire army, so I don't know if it's an army or army corps, on a huge map up to 150 by 100 kilometers. So, I mean, it's really intriguing, and I'm curious how this will all play out. The other piece that was kind of interesting to me about this announcement is that there's self-publishing. So Steel Division was their first partnership with Paradox. It didn't seem to go well from a sales point of view. I was actually kind of speculating. I said it was kind of interesting that they weren't going to be publishing with Paradox. And the Wargamer from Twitter responded to me. So the Twitter for the website wargamer.com responded to me saying they're not surprised. They're disappointed that Paradox isn't going to be the publisher for Eugen. Although, well, I guess I'll read the tweet. They said, "I'm not surprised by this. Disappointed, perhaps, although that's not the right word. We'd heard rumors Steel Division 44 didn't perform that well. I can see New Age Paradox not wanting to take them forward for a second time." Now, that's their speculation. They also go on to say, although it could just as easily have been Eugen deciding they'd be better off doing this by themselves, we may never know. So there seems to be, at least Wargames closer than I am to how these games are performing, or, all those other kind of things. But it does sound interesting to me that perhaps the game didn't do as well as either they or Paradox had hoped, and for one reason or another, they've decided to go it on their own, which is interesting. I mean, I don't know if that means a different strategic approach from a DLC perspective. Usually Paradox doesn't release games every year. This one's coming out, or is being announced, about a year after the last one came out, so there's definitely a different direction there. But I'm kind of curious from like a business point of view. Eugen seems to be, it would really make for a good feature piece for someone like Rob Zacny, or someone who writes like these, pieces and sort of brings companies and their drama to life. He did a really good piece years ago on sort of the death of Mad Minute Games, the developers of Take Command, and then the subsequent split off for Scourge of War. Those kind of articles are always really interesting, and Eugen Systems as a company has had kind of an interesting history, right? Like, they released Ruse, which was a major published game, I think by Ubisoft, which was on consoles and PC, which is sort of the first of these real-time strategy games. It was a really innovative in design, didn't do great from a sales perspective. Then they jumped into the War Games series and released, 3 or 4 different games in the War Games series, which built really loyal followings and somewhat sizable online followings for these games, which looked at the Cold War, the 1980s Cold War gone hot, or hypothetical conflict in near past Asia, a wide range of options there. And then they go to Steel Division 44, and they pair up with Paradox Interactive to publish the game. So they go back to World War II, they go to Normandy, the War Game series, I believe, were all self-published. So they had the big publisher for Ruse, then they go self-publishing for the War Game series, then they go back to a publisher for Steel Division, and now for Steel Division 2, they're going back to self-publishing. And in between Steel Division 1, after Steel Division 1, a bunch of their workers went on strike because apparently I don't know if there were issues getting paid or if there were just disputes over what they should have been paid, but a bunch of their workers went on strike. So it's a company that's had a lot of ups, a lot of downs. Ruse didn't do well. The War Games series seemed to have done well. Steel Division reportedly may not have done well, although we don't really know. And then, we'll see what Steel Division 2 brings. So up and down and kind of all over the place with Eugen Systems, and they could make a really, it'd make a fascinating story, I think. But the other fascinating piece is, again, so they published this World War II game, if it really didn't do well, they're still sticking with World War II. They're going to the Russian front, so maybe they really believe this thing can do well, and it's just a matter of getting it right. And I think a good sign is the effort that they're going to be putting into the campaign. To me, that is one of the key things that prevented me from enjoying Steel Division as much as I otherwise could have. So that's exciting. I really like their frontline system in the battles. That was neat. I hope they keep that. But we'll see. Anyway, guys, this is just sort of my initial reaction to this. I saw the tweet when I was at work that they had announced this, and I was just kind of like, wow, that's really interesting. And I think the thing that really stood out to me was the fact that they weren't being published by Paradox. But we really don't know why. It's just sort of speculation, kind of from different people. But whatever the reason, I'm looking forward to this a lot. Operation Bagration is one of the largest battles in human history. It is one of the most decisive battles in World War II. The idea of being able to fight that out in a grand campaign is fascinating, and it sounds like they're going to try and up the scale and up the ratios of soldiers to casualties, and commanding multiple divisions. I think this could be really interesting. I'm going to be following it closely. I'm definitely going to play it when it comes out. But let me know your thoughts, guys. Is this something you're excited about? Had you heard about this? What are your thoughts? I think that's all that we're gonna do today, though. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts below. And until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out. Hi, I'm a YouTuber.